الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين سيدنا ونبينا وشفينا أبي القاسم محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام على آله الطيبين الطاهرين المظلومين المعصومين أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى وتبارك في كتاب المبين وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا تظلمون ولا تظلمون. Brothers and sisters of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in His great gospel, our holy Quran, and tells us, directs us, do not side with the tyrant. Do not side with the people who oppress others, but be with the oppressed. Be with the one who are suffering at the hands of the others, and side with them, be with them, help them. Be with the Mazlumeen. During the last few days, we have been looking at this topic with our views focused on one particular place on this earth, and that is the place called Karbala. Karbala, a desolate desert, a place where hardly thing grew, was to become to the world of Shian Ahl Bayt, followers of our great Prophet and his progeny, a place that will mold their lives and thoughts forever after. Karbala became the crucible. Karbala became the weighing scales and measures of our lives. And it is from Karbala we learn the meanings of the surahs and ayat of Quran. It is from Karbala we learn the lives and the sayings of the great Prophet. It is from Karbala we learn the nature of our great Prophet, from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, his khulq azim, his akhlaq, his etiquette, his manners, his amal, his behavior, his acts, all we can have an opportunity to learn from one place and one episode, the battle of Karbala. The battle of right against wrong, the battle of good against evil, the battle of sin against all the goods we can do in this life, the battle between our life in earth and the gains we aim for hereafter. To discuss this, points of views and various meanings I have with me a very dedicated, very honorable, intellectual writer and speaker in his own right, a Christian by belief, but a Christian by belief that we are all equal and all the faiths must enjoy dialogue and understanding amongst themselves. And you know, that great character, that great personality is Chris Hewitt. Chris, thank you very much once again to make time and effort to be at this program. And as I was introducing this topic, that we should be thinking more of the time with the oppressed than the ones who have got the power to make those oppressions. We yesterday talked about, and you in particular mentioned, the ways the world makes us indebted in their ways and buys our will, our thoughts, our minds, even our acts and actions, and they make that purchase. And once we fall in the trap of that debt, we can hardly ever get out of it. Today, also, we want to know, looking at Karbala and pre-Karbala period, which was perhaps the preparation grounds in many ways for what was to befall in Karbala. At the time of Muawiyah, he used various means, sometimes subtle, sometimes not subtle, sometimes camouflage, but sometimes, brutal force to enhance his power. What we know today is we say marketing tools or PR, public relations tools, to make every possible means for a propaganda to enslave the thoughts and minds of people. The same Ali that they were thinking was great yesterday, and they used the tool of all this propaganda machinery to make him think he's the most evil person on this planet. First, looking at this modern age, day and age, and then we'll come back to Ali. How do you see propaganda, PR, marketing tools openly or in subtle ways are used in this modern day and age to do exactly what Muawiyah tried to do in his lifetime? In modern day and age, sometimes these tools are used for good purposes and good intentions, but often they use this tool to manipulate our minds and thoughts. For the sake of the audience to understand, with some examples, could you tell us how is it possible when people are more learned and scholarly, and universities and colleges, they can fall prey to such tools?
I think it's very useful, first of all, to take a lesson from the Buddhist tradition, because the Buddhists have a teaching that says that desire is the source of all suffering. If you want to remove suffering, remove the desire. Now, we see that in advertising, for example, in marketing in our own society. How often are we subjected to advertising which is designed to provoke a desire within us?
Oh, mashallah, yes.
You will not be a full human being if you do not have this latest mobile phone, if you do not drive this kind of car, if you do not wear these clothes, if you do not send your child to this kind of school. So advertising is there to manipulate human beings so that they will purchase the goods that we are marketing. Now, we know that a lot of this advertising actually is aimed at children.
Yes, very much so.
If you are turning on the television for the last 3 or 4 months of the year, there are so many advertisements aimed at children for various toys or games or whatever.
True.
So that the child then starts to play on the parents
Yes.
I must have, I need this, I want that. And then sometimes we will hear, so-and-so is going to have that, I want one too. Otherwise, I will be laughed at by them.
Yes.
So we can see that this manipulation goes in lots of different directions. Now, as sensible parents, we know very well that children cannot have all those things that they desire. And so provoking that desire is going to lead to suffering. You can't have it, you're going to suffer. So we can see the truth of the Buddhist teaching here, that suffering is caused by desire. Provoke the desire and you will bring that person into more and more suffering. And so in our own time, huge amounts of money are spent on advertising. You have beautiful photographs. You have very creative people who are thinking, what kind of slogan should we use here? And then people are thinking, where should we put the advertising? Should we put it on the side of a bus? Should we put it on the side of the road? Should we put it in the newspaper? What kind of newspaper? On the television? During which kind of program? So a huge amount of energy is spent to provoke this kind of desire in people. And this is just a route to more and more suffering within society. And it is a route to remove human freedom, because you are no longer free to decide, do you really need that? Is that the best way to spend your money? You are being manipulated and twisted through the advertisers.
But are we aware of it often?
I'm sure that we're not, because if we were aware of it, we wouldn't buy the things and the advertising companies would go out of business. The fact is, they are booming within society because they get more and more sophisticated at provoking the desire through advertising.
And also with advertising, then on television and the media is very important these days, is it not? Not just for reading out the news, but for all these purposes as you have just mentioned. What is the power of media over us in this modern day and age?
You see, sometimes people say the camera cannot lie.
Yes.
This is, of course, complete nonsense.
Yes.
Because it depends who is pointing the camera and at what. So when we receive news from the media, always there has been a human intention there. What aspect of this particular news story do I want to cover? How do I want to portray it to people? So news is never neutral. Even if you are standing pointing a camera at an act, you are always influencing the way that that is perceived. But the reality is that in our modern societies, people receive their information through newspapers, through the radio, through the television, through the internet. These organs of mass media are the way of communicating with people. And one thing that we must take from this is they are never neutral. They are always engineered by somebody to bring about the right kind of reaction. So we are being fed somebody else's editorial line in all these forms of media.
We have learned from Chris the power of the media in this modern day and age. Whether it is for the sale of a pair of socks, to the tires, television, gadgets, as Chris pointed out. This phone came out 6 months ago. Now the new one is here. The 6 month, there's nothing wrong with it. Now, guys, you must buy the new one, right? and you must find the money to do it. And this functioning one becomes obsolete. We must have it because it is important that, as Chris says, my next door neighbor has it, my friend at work and school has it, and it is. So we are captivated and then captured and then imprisoned in our thoughts, mind and deeds by the use of the media and the public relations, PR media, and the advertisement media. The news goes out and they're happy. Let me ask Chris, did Muawiyah, a clever, unscrupulous person, used every forms and means to attain his goals, used the pulpits, the mosques, the minarets for these very purpose of PR, advertising, and broadcasting messages to the audience that he wanted to capture. Chris, how did he manage to do that, number one, in those days? What was his thinking? How to achieve it? Yeah, although he had an army, right, to do so, but why did he use the mosques, i.e. in those days media and PR relationship to achieve them? And were there people who paid price for that in those times and age?
You see, if you are involved in the media and you're wanting to manipulate people, you have first of all to find a way to make your voice heard. Now, in traditional societies, that way was to go up to a high place and call in a loud voice. That's the origin of the minaret, for example. And so you want to attract people and then for them to appreciate the gravity of what you're saying. Now, if you are within an Islamic religious context, if somebody is standing on the mimbar when they're saying something, that has an added gravity because of the place on which that person is standing. Now we can see then the way that Muawiyah uses the mimbar in this context. For example, in Kufar, before the call to Imam Hussein, there is a revolt there in favor of Imam Hussein, which is led by Hujr ibn Adi.
Hujr ibn Ali, yes.
Yes. Now, that is crushed by the forces of Yazid, and he is sent to Muawiyah. Muawiyah says, you have a choice. Either you will stand up in public and you will curse the name of Imam Ali, in which case you will go free.
Fine.
Or you face death in the morning. Now you can see you have both the use of the media here. Here is a man who is a leader within society, who will take a position of prominence, and from this position will curse Imam Ali, a huge media coup, we would say. But you have a second element to this.
Yeah. What
are your limits? What are the limits? Somebody says to you, you will drink this fizzy drink and not this fizzy drink. Okay, it doesn't matter. But there are some things in life that do matter. And there are some things that all of us must face in our lives that we say, this matters so much,
yes,
I am prepared to die rather than do it. And we can see both aspects of this in this story.
Fascinating. In those days and age, Muawiyah used his PR marketing industry to his benefit to the maximum. So much so that even at the time of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, a man comes from from Muawiyah's camp and sees our Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, and he uses the worst of vocabulary against the Imam. Imam doesn't interrupt him, let him have his say. And he says, "Oh visitor, are you thirsty? Are you in need of food and drink? If so, let me arrange it." And he keeps on abusing further. He says, "Are you a traveler? Do you need transport? Do you need a camel or something?" And he further goes on. He says, "Are you an outsider who needs some place to stay?" And Imam keeps on talking like that. When he sees that here is a person whom I am abusing, is not losing his temper, he is making all the possible gestures I would expect from someone with whom I was acquainted and a member of the family or someone who respects. When he sees that, he said, "But you are Imam Hassan?" He said, "Yes." "You are not getting angry? I've said all this." He says, "Come and sit down with me." Then he says, "I was told that you are this, that, this, and that's why I came with this anger and venom to throw at you." So the PR and the marketing tool that Muawiyah need to denounce Mawlaya Kainat Ali ibn Abi Talib Islam and his two sons was the tool he used. But the tool he used, but as you say, there were certain people who were brave enough not to be sold and bought. And Hajar is one of those companions who bravely said, "It is better to live a day with honor than to live 1,000 years in disgrace." A similar phrase used in the Battle of Karbala. But Hajar had to pay a price, and the price he paid, as you say, was with his life. So in Hajar's eyes, there was something greater, more important, more powerful, more honorable than just a human life. Chris, if we look at various other companions of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, we see similar acts of sacrifice as Hajar ibn Adi was ready to give. Why is this? That at the worst moment of life, when there's doom and gloom, when there's definite smell of death in the air, people did not leave Imam Hussain alayhi salam to do any sort of a deal with Yazid or his soldiers.
I think that we must answer this question by saying this is the perpetual human desire and force to seek out what is true and just and good. And I say perpetual because what we see on the field of Karbala, we can see repeated. The same gesture in other times, in other faith communities as well. Let us take an example from Judaism just for a moment. Some decades before the time of Jesus, there was an invasion of Jerusalem. They were desecrating the temple, and in order to bring about the compliance of the Jews, they were forcing them to eat swine flesh, something totally forbidden.
Pig. As we said, simple.
Pig, simple. So, they brought one of the elders, a 90-year-old man, a man of great seniority within the community, called Eleazar. And they said to him, "You must eat this, then you will set an example to all the others." And one of them came to him and said, "You are a man of great respect and great honor. Look, let us have food brought that you can eat, and you just pretend to be eating the pig, and in this way you will save your life." And Eleazar answers, "And what about all the people who will look and who will see? If Eleazar can do this at 90 years of age, for the sake of another few months or years of his life, we too should give in to injustice and to oppression." And he refuses, and they take him to the block and they beat him to death with hammers.
But it's a price he paid.
It's a price that he paid for the sake of, we can crudely say, the advertisement as well.
Yes.
Not just a price that he paid for being honest and true before God,
Yes.
but because of his responsibility to the people.
Responsibility to people. The episode shows how a person paid the price. But when it comes to the responsibility to God Almighty, responsibility to the duties that one's promises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God Almighty and His Prophet, then the responsibility becomes manifold, bigger, larger, heavier, and more important. Let me ask Chris this question, that from the annals of history, right from the days of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam to this modern day and age, not long ago, in the same very country where Karbala is, was a very tyrant leader who bore the name of HUSSAIN but had the first name Saddam attached to it. And he goes to Najaf, where the spiritual leaders of the Shia faith are, and he wants to buy them off. Whether it is Ayatollah Khoi, his family members, and all. And I haven't got the time, but you know them, the family, not only the Ayatollah himself, the Marja himself, but the whole family had to pay the price. The price they had learned can be paid to sacrifice one's sons, daughters, grandchildren, wife, or the closed ones that they saw took place in the field of Karbala. People sometimes ask, why remember a 1400 plus old episode in this modern time and time? If Ayatollah Khoi and his family hadn't remembered the price Imam Hussain paid in Karbala, how would he have to draw the courage from that episode in his own life? Is it possible in this modern day and age now to be that committed to our faith, to our beliefs, that we are ready to pay such a price in this modern day and age? Does it require, and does it happen?
I think that it happens both in everyday things, and also it happens in great monumental events. Let us look at some of the everyday things first of all. What mother who is, no matter how tired, does not go to the sound of a crying baby?
Yes.
What doctor, governed by his Hippocratic oath, refuses to go to the side, to the need of a patient because he's afraid he might catch something from that person? You see, every day in our duties, in our little ways, we are learning to implement the message. I remember very well a saying from Gandhiji in India, and he was speaking provocatively to the British forces, to the British general. And he was saying, arrest me if you want to, put me in prison if you want to, beat me if you really feel you must, kill me if you want to go to that extent, and then you will have my dead body, but you will never have my obedience to your unjust law. And so the example of Karbala runs on in big ways and in little ways down through the centuries to our own time. We must be alert and we must look for it. There are duties that must be performed. That is the spirit of Karbala. There are stands that must be taken. That is the spirit of Karbala. There are things that are more important even than my own life. That is the spirit of Karbala. Let's just take one more example from that time itself, and it is that of the messenger of Imam Hussein, who is sent back to Kufa, Qais ibn Bashir.
Sorry?
Qais.
Oh, okay.
Yeah? Now, he is captured by Ibn Ziyad. And again, the same old trick.
He's the messenger, emissary of Imam Hussein.
Correct. Who is sent back to tell the people of Kufa that he's coming. Do not fear.
But he's captured in between.
He is captured by Ibn Ziyad. And the same trick again, take the mimbar and curse Imam Hussein and Imam Ali. And now we see another aspect of human ingenuity. Because he takes the mimbar and everybody is waiting and listening, he has an audience.
That he's about to denounce.
And he denounces Ibn Ziyad and he praises the name of Imam Ali and of Imam Hussein.
MashaAllah.
So in this way, he is, as it were, he's beating Ibn Ziyad at his own game. Nevertheless, it has a price. Because you can imagine that Ibn Ziyad is not pleased to be tricked in this way. And so we constantly need to be looking how to learn the measures, how to learn the teachings, the examples, and how to put them into practice in different ways.
That's a great example that you've just heard from Chris. Let me tell you, sometimes in big ways, sometimes in small ways, in all our lives, a time will come when you and I will have an opportunity, a chance to choose between the right and the wrong, between good and evil, between righteousness and the sins we commit. We will have those opportunities. As in English language the saying goes, opportunity knocks but once. The example Chris gave of a companion of Imam Hussain in Islam, he has got one opportunity alone, to stand on the mimbar in front of an audience to denounce his master, Ali ibn Abu Talib alayhi salam, and denounce his son Hussain ibn Ali alayhi salam. He does take the mimbar. At that moment, when he is standing before the mimbar, the choice is his. Either he can choose heaven or he can choose life in hell, but at least in the world he will have the wealth and the prestige and all the trappings that Muawiyah has to offer. In that split second, he makes his decision. In your life and in my life, many a time will come, we will have a split second to make those decisions. Learn, as Chris says, from the episodes of Karbala. See the human nature true in its real form on the sands of Karbala. From old ones like Habib ibn al-Muzahir, from young ones like Ali Akbar alayhi salam, from the little infant like Ali Asghar alayhi salam. Each of them had that moment in their time and life to make a decision. And the decision they made, for which we love them, we are ready to sacrifice any for their name. We are ready to beat our chests, shed our tears for what they did 1400 years ago. You, in today's narration, have an opportunity to either listen to our discourse here and go away and say it is 14-year-old tale, nothing to learn, or learn from this episode the great characters Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to us in form of prophets, Nabi, Imam, Khalifa, for us to take those messages from. Teach your children that even this modern day and age, don't sell your soul for 30 pieces of silver. What you will lose here, you will gain far, far more in their life hereafter. And from this battle of Karbala, we have learned one thing, how people prepared themselves for this battle. Very briefly, Chris, how did, when those who came knowingly what was to happen to them, how did they prepare themselves that at the last moment when the decision has to be made, they will not tremble, shudder and crumble and not fulfill their desires?
Trembling and crumbling are not the same thing.
Yes.
You know? The fool who recklessly goes to do some act, that is not an act of courage.
No.
That's an act of foolishness. The courageous one is the one who knows what they're doing and still goes through, who feels fear. Who wouldn't be afraid? Waiting in the cells to be taken up to be tortured. Who wouldn't be afraid? Who wouldn't be afraid on the field of Karbala seeing others being killed? But courage is the one who goes through with their duty in spite of the trembling.
MashaAllah.
Courage does not mean I don't have any feelings, I don't consider the consequences. Courage means going through in spite of all that. And so where did they draw their courage? Well, we know that they spent their time in prayer, in reciting the Quran,
MashaAllah.
in, as it were, keeping open their channel between themselves and God, and by seeking the messenger's representative, the Imam in their midst. Because by holding fast, as the Quran says, holding fast to the message of truth, holding fast to your creatureliness before God, holding fast to the messenger of God and to his successor, in this way comes the strength to act with courage. This is the way, I think, that they prepared themselves. They come to the point of saying, where else can I go? I must live with integrity. Living with integrity means dying with integrity. I could never look myself in the mirror again if I walked away from this.
MashaAllah. And, brothers and sisters, others prepared themselves in the same way. Imam's sister, Saniya Zahra, Janab Zainab Salamullah, brought with her two little doves, beautiful little children, called on Muhammad. And Janab Zainab prepared them physically and mentally and sat them down to say, on Muhammad, tomorrow will be the time of your test, of your imtihan. Tomorrow you will be tested. Beta, children, you are the grandchildren of Jafar al-Tayyar, of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. You are the sons and grandchildren of great warriors. Let not your limbs tremble of fear when you go to the battle tomorrow. Show the enemies whose bloods are in your veins. Next day, morning, these little children are put on the attire of a little soldiers. Their swords are so big that they almost touch the ground. They go to the Imam, Sayyid al-Shuhada, to ask permission to go to battle. When he sees his nephews, his tears swell in his eyes. And he says, you are the stars of your mother's eyes, my eyes. How can I let little children like you go to battle? With great difficulty and persuasion, the Imam gives these little children of Janab Zainab the opportunity to go to battle. In fact, they are so little, he sits them on the horses himself. They go and they really fight and shows to the enemy that they are the true sons of Jafar al-Tayyar, that they are true sons of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Haidar al-Karrar. They go, then the enemy say to their soldiers, they are no ordinary children. You must know they are the sons, grandsons of Ali ibn Abi Talib and Jafar al-Tayyar. Surround them from all sides. Two children, little children, surrounded by the soldiers from all sides and being attacked from all sides. And they get separated and the enemies succumb to the enemies' arrows, spears and swords. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. The two bodies are on the sands of Karbala. Imam HUSSAIN Islam and Ghazi Abbas, Abul Fadl Abbas, his brother, are there. They go and pick the little children in their hand. Janab Zainab, his sister, Saniya Zahra, is in the tent with her musalla spread out, sitting down, facing the sky, and the curtains of the tent parts. On one side, Imam HUSSAIN places the lasha, the body of one child, and Ghazi Abbas, Abul Fazl Abbas, places the body of their little petal, little soul. You know what? Janab Zainab goes to the sajda and says to Allah, Allah, this is the price I had promised to pay. Allah, thank you for giving me the courage, and thank you for giving my children the courage to pay the sacrifice. Oh Allah, give me the courage to continue like this. From that day onwards, Zainab never took the name of the children to remember. She, from the time she left Karbala to Kufa to town, it was HUSSAIN, Abu Abdullah, whose name she took and cried with. But very briefly, when she reached back home after her pain to Medina, she entered the house and opened the door of a little room. In that little room were two little cots of two little babies, side by side. Zainab fell on the floor, took the two little pillows, and held it to her chest, and said, "Oh Muhammad, I too have the heart of a mother. You may think I forgot you. No, my children, I never forgot you. You are the stars of my heart, my petals. I will always love you. But little children, my stars, I must thank you. I must thank you. What you gave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the field of Karbala. Oh, my children, Zainab will remain indebted all her life for what you gave on the field of Karbala. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un.